Welcome to our 50th season of Basic Black. Some of you are joining us on our live broadcast. Others joining us on Facebook Live. I'm your host tonight, Chris Collins, filling in for Kelly Crossley, who has a well-deserved night off. Joining me tonight, Shawn Brown, Executive Director of BAM, Becoming a Man program here in Boston. Robert Lewis Jr., founder of The Base. James Morton, President and CEO of the YMCA of Greater Boston. And Reverend Dr. Emmett G. Price III, founding pastor of Community of Love Christian Fellowship. He's also a regular contributor to WGBH's Boston Public Radio segment, All Revved Up. Gentlemen, we welcome you all. And, of course, myself, when I'm not a sportscaster or I'm not invited to host a show like this one, I'm working in the community, helping educate those of color on financial and economic literacy. Gentlemen, again, welcome. This is a great time.
Great to be here.
Great to be here.
Some great stuff to talk about tonight. And I feel a little bit honored because all four of you, a little bit of Boston royalty. But at the end of the day, we all deal with, as men of color, we all deal with some of the same issues that involve men of color specifically. And it takes us all somewhat of a village to get to where we are, to get to where you guys are. Sure. And when you look back at how you've kind of evolved and turned into great men and great leaders in this community, let's start with you, Robert. How do you get there without mentoring? How do you get there without a solid mentor?
You can't. I always say when you stand, there's others standing with me. I was blessed, by folks who believed in me, coaches and teachers. Mel King at 16 years old, taking you under his wing. Ray Hammond, taking me under his wing when I was 18. The late Jorge Hernandez in Villa Victoria. What they were my GPS. They taught me, they showed me, they expected of me. And when you went this way, they always straighten you out. So what you realize is that you stand on the shoulders of so many who stood before you. And that's why I stand here, because it was mentors, both men and women, who just loved me enough and believed enough in me for me to be here. So it's so necessary in everything we're doing.
Shawn, you became a father at a very early age, and I mentioned that because I'm so proud of your son having gone to where I went to high school, New Hampton Prep, and is continuing his education at George Washington. So obviously he had a very firm foundation. But you, someone who was so young, where did it come from?
For me, it was a mentor. Like I said, growing up, I was often told that I'd be two places, dead or in jail. But I had a mentor who came into my life and believed in me and gave me an opportunity when others didn't. And like Robert says, I too stand on the shoulders of many who came before me, and that's the reason why I'm here today. So when those folks told me that I would be dead or in jail, my mentor saw something else in me. He saw leadership. And that conversation started in high school. And in high school, I was involved in a lot of negativity that society has to offer a lost young man without the proper guidance. And, I remember him saying to me, young man, what's your plan? And I said, well, when I leave here, I'm going to see the girls, talking about after school. Sure. I'm going to go see the girls. He's like, no, what's your plan for life? I said, I don't know. He said, remember this. Those who fail a plan to fail. And that always stuck with me. And that mentor is Ed Powell. At the time, he was a career specialist at high school in Charlestown, and he was one of the first black men that I saw in a suit and tie that I really respected and really modeled what it meant to be a man, what it meant to be a professional, a husband. So for me, it started there with Ed, really instilling those values in me at an early age.
James, dead or in jail? I know you had some brothers. And how do you end up a lawyer, a successful CEO, and when it certainly could have went in your neighborhood, it could have went a different direction?
Well, like my brothers here, I think the only reason I'm here is because I had, we called them caring adults in my life. We didn't have the word mentor to refer to them, right? But caring adults. And so I had Mrs. Mary Lee who convinced me that I wasn't a juvenile delinquent and a slow learner. I had Mr. Robert Fox, who gave me a job at 13, so that I always had some coins in my pocket, but I also had the example of a black man running his own business and doing it successfully. And then I had Coach Curry, who said if I worked as hard in the classroom as I worked on the track, that he'd get me to college. And he did coach me to college, but not as an athlete. So I got to college on the strength of my grades, and so it's those three people who saved my life. And so every day, like the rest of the brothers in this room today, I devote my life to making sure that as many young people have caring adults in their lives as possible, because I've been able to see the power and I've been the beneficiary of that.
Teachers, coaches, the church. What led you down this road, Emmett?
Yeah, I think, like my brothers have said, you see something, you say something. And we use that phrase in a negative way. But the thing about mentors, you see something in young people or even middle-aged people. And you want to help to manifest that thing that you see. I always teach my folks that if you don't trust yourself, trust me until you trust yourself, right? Because I see something in you.
Yes.
And if you value and appreciate, my role in your life, then trust me. And so, I had phenomenal parents who are still on the planet, great pastors, Reverend Robert Wilkins, who was with the YMCA, and I grew up in Los Angeles. And so we were dealing with the street gangs and also the LAPD gang. And, Reverend Wilkins worked for the YMCA and would bring the van around. And if we can get in touch with him, he'll come pick us up and take us to one of the local branches. It's kind of a sanctuary. Then I got to college as a 17-year-old freshman, and Dr. Ollie Wilson, music professor. I went to college as a math major. And there was this phenomenal African-American professor who used to glide across the hall. And I would go practice, because I was a math major, and I would see him, and I would schedule my practicing to go to see him. And one day I just walked up to him and I said, "Man, who are you?" And he laughed and took me in his office. And that semester I changed my major to math and music. And my whole career as a music professor and as a professor was because he saw something in me. I was just in California last week at his memorial service. We buried him last week at 80. And I'm reflecting on this, that if he had not intervened or interceded in my life, man, no telling what would have happened.
Yes.
Well said.
I'm proud to say, right up to the day my father passed about 11 years ago, Boston Latin kid, Roxbury kid, always in the house. Are we doing enough as a community of men of color to be in the house, to be mentoring our kids, our own kids, our flesh and blood? Or is there more we can do?
That's for me. It's a hard question, because what defines the house?
Yeah.
I start at the base. I have a facility right in Roxbury, a few blocks from my brother here, at the Augustin Y. And our young folks, when you walk in, says, "We're home."
Yeah.
And, we're home, and we love this family. So what I have seen is there's a lot of great Black and Latino men doing great work. I don't think sometimes it gets recognized. There's a lot of coaches, there's others. And what has happened with this mentoring program is sometimes we're trying to recruit corporate folks to come to our neighborhood to mentor our kids, and coaches and folks from the church and folks everywhere. So is there more? There's more we can do. But I'm going to say the more we have to do is not just with the young brothers that will work. We got to shift the narrative.
Yes.
We have to stop this at-risk, underserved, disadvantaged.
Yeah, right.
We have to stop saying they're less than.
Right.
The narrative has to shift. The language has to shift, and we have to uplift. So until we look at these young brothers and look at them and say, there's just, and I have on my board, and I say, be exceptional.
Yeah.
So when we raise this bar, then it's going to be what we have to do for my own son, too, the base folks. But if we own these young brothers and we shift this now and uplift, man, we got a shot.
Right.
Yeah.
We got a shot because everyone else is talking about this at-risk, underserved, disadvantaged. And look at this. I mean, I'm going to be honest, man. I'm inspired by this because this is what's great about our community.
Yes.
When you look at the numbers and you look at any of the studies done on mentoring, violent crimes are down in those communities, education, the degrees are up, which are all great things. How does that become, bigger numbers? Violent crime down even more, astronomical numbers. Everybody's going to college. Where college is no longer an aberration or a stretch, where it's the norm. How do we get to that point?
Well, I think we get there by understanding that everyone has a different yellow brick road.
Yes.
Right? So if you look at the whole, I like the Wiz, not the Wizard of Oz. So when you look at the Wiz,
run down the road.
you know what I mean? And everybody was looking for something different, but it was the same path that everyone took. And I think we have to understand that even the college thing, and I'm not anti-college, I'm a professor. I'm pro-college, but there's some voc ed stuff that we need to look at. There's some alternative stuff that we need to look at that will allow people to be their best selves. And I think the other piece that in the notion about the house and the community and the neighborhood or the village, whatever, anecdote we use or analogy that we use, we have to use a us analogy, a we, not I versus I or you versus you. And I think that's a dynamic shift in the narrative. So we're not ostracized, we're not disadvantaged, we're not oppressed, we're not this. We are powerful people, I would argue spiritual beings who have absolute, positively, all kind of trajectory that we can manifest in real time, but we have to believe it for ourselves.
That's right. And I think there is a strategy. If we want to serve more, we have to do it together.
That's right.
We can't continue to do it the way we're doing it at the present moment, and that's in our individual silos. We've got to find those ways where we can join forces with each other and take advantage of the expertise that we all bring, because we're all serving children, but the children we're serving, the young people we're serving, are looking for particular things. I can't provide all those things at the Y. We can't provide all those things at BASE or BAM or whatever other organizations we're connected to. But together we can make sure that every child gets what they need and we can serve more of them. That's the power. And we control the resources.
Yes.
We're running the organizations. These are our children. We love these children as if they're our own. And so that gives us a little bit of advantage. So we have the power of empathy, not sympathy.
That's right.
We don't sympathize. We empathize. And the power of empathy allows us to see our young people differently with a caring heart. And then that caring heart is what's going to give us the power to make a difference, to make an impact. But we're going to figure out how to do it together. That's the new horizon.
Are we getting there? Because here we are 50 years after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. And as much as it feels like sometimes we have progressed, other times it feels like, well, we've taken 2 or 3 steps back. And, for being someone of color who lives in the city of Boston, sometimes it's darn hard waking up in the morning, looking at what I'm staring at. Are we making enough movement?
I would say we're on the right path. Just to piggyback off what my brother was saying a minute ago, I think as cliche as it sounds, it's about meeting our young people where they are. And I think you really have to be true to that and understanding that not everyone's path is the same. So it's figuring out, what their goals are in life and not pushing our agenda on our young people, but using what they want to get out of life and using that as a way of one of the things I tell my young people is tell me what you want to, what's your goal in life? What's your plan? And what I tell them is once you tell me that, I'm just going to use it to hold you accountable. I'm going to use it to help you achieve what you want. And when you're off track, we're going to have that conversation around this is what you said that you wanted, and right now what you're doing is not aligned with, what you said for the goals. And then also something that I didn't have growing up but I wanted was this type of relationship, being able to connect young people, with the seasoned. And I think the relationships that I have now, with some seasoned mentors, being able to connect them back with that younger generation is important because there's a disconnect there in having those conversations with my young people. So I think we are on the right track because we're seeing a lot of that happening. I know it's intentional with me, and everything that I do is making sure that our young people are connected to brothers like Mr. Lewis and things like that because, again, they might see him and, see him as this this powerful figure in the community, but don't have that relationship. So it's important for me to know that that's a connection that's important. This young person can be in a special place if I'm able to bridge that gap between him and a mentor.
In a city this size, is there enough of us? Is there enough of us to go around, or should we and do we need to and are we actively recruiting others, bringing others along?
Well, I'm a divine optimist, man. So I don't think the question is there enough of us? The question is, are we operating at our maximum potential?
Right.
And are we being effective and efficient in what we have to offer? And so part of, Robert got this right, part of what it is the narrative, man, the narrative. So we and I don't even know how to say this because there's not too many people who we memorialize or celebrate the assassination of their life. So just talking about the 50th anniversary of an assassination changes the narrative, right? The narrative for me of King was a brilliant person who Lorraine Hansberry and Nina Simone would call young, gifted, and black. Brother who graduated high school at 15, then went to graduate school, graduated from there, then came up here and got his doctorate in his 20s. And so we look at him being assassinated at 39, but we don't look at the young King and how he associates or is able to associate with young people. The brother had depression. The brother tried to commit suicide. Right? And we don't talk about this story because that's the narrative that brings him to be real. Right? So that a person who's gone through that can actually come to a BU and get his doctorate in systematic theology and do all the phenomenal things. He seems like an icon. We need him to be an ordinary person doing extraordinary things because that's the connection.
That's right. That's right.
When you see all those kids coming in and out the doors of your Ys, you know, black men and boys of color, I mean, what do you see?
I see power. I see the future.
Yes.
I see young people who have great potential, and I also see hope for our future.
Yes.
And that's the thing that drives me to work every day. Is all of that possibility. And we collectively get an opportunity to cultivate that. You know, I think Bob has it absolutely right. We've got to start to think about and look at our people differently. If we use the word vulnerable, then let's use next to it phenomenal.
Yes.
Vulnerable but phenomenal. Yes. Not see them as deficit but as assets. See what's good about them and not what's bad about them. Think about it, man. Every young person who walks the street of Boston gets growled at 100 times a day. And if you get growled at 100 times a day, you're going to start growling back. Yes, but the minute we get young people in our programs and we start to whittle away at that exterior, we start to see the real person, the real people underneath, and the real potential that they have. It's remarkable. Yes, it's remarkable. And I am so optimistic that you asked, are we doing it now? Are we ready now? I do see us making strides toward working together more collaboratively because I think that we're realizing that the power is the impact that we can have. Not what we're doing today, but the future impact. And we all recognize that we need to work together in order to reach our fullest potential as organizations. And as a matter of fact, we're not in competition with each other.
That's right.
The competition is hopelessness and despair.
Sure.
That's the competition, not what we share. We're ready to take this on.
We know how to compete against that.
That's right.
You know, and
that's right.
As everyone's talking, the thing that just keeps resonating with me is we're sitting here as the example. Right? Years ago, we wouldn't be sitting here collectively. And we just shifted our motto, and it's not a motto for the base. It's a motto. Urban talent is American talent. And this is what we're talking about. And you know, part of this is also this love and our young folks loving and believing in themselves, right? And then all of a sudden, this whole idea of like, you can stand tall, right? We have this thing, if you go in the base, my letterhead says 02119. Our business cards say Roxbury, not Boston, 02119. We say Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, right? So, but it's real, right? Because the growl is, people keep saying Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, right? So some of this is it. And, you know, one of the things, it's interesting as we're sitting here, right? Someone's going to watch TV and says, look at the panel. But what folks didn't see in that room is a love of brothers who do this instinctively and naturally. But the funniest thing is the video doesn't catch that. Or folks don't catch it. So when you're asking, are we doing enough? We're doing it. I just think at the same time, what we have to just make sure that we continue to do is not give up. It is hard. I mean, we were talking about you were saying about Dr. King's vulnerability. Man, I got tough days. And when I got tough days, I need brothers who are mentoring me. Because this crazy thing is, it's not just the young brothers we're serving. We need to make sure our health and well-being is taken care of us because this is a marathon. And I'm not running a marathon. It's a marathon. But
you live in a marathon. You live in a marathon.
Right, so that growl you talked about, I know we've all been growled at over and over. And again, to my point where, you know, sometimes it's not easy getting up. You know, sometimes it's not easy.
There's an inherent anxiety of being a black or brown man in this country because the notion of how the country is run, the curriculum that we're trained under, and even the current existence. If you're brown, you're worried about being deported. If you're black, you're worried about being shot.
Right.
And we all wake up and carry that, not even just for ourselves, but for our young people. I have 2 sons, both teenagers, right? You have a son going to college. And we invest a lot of our time and our energy in the folks who we love the most, but we walk around with an anxiety. There's a trauma that we've all lived through. You know, one of the reasons I'm in Boston, you know, in addition to the divine appointment that I have here, man, I ran from Los Angeles. You dig what I mean? Right. And the Atlantic Ocean stopped me.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Because I was gone. And so there's an anxiety there that we walk with, and you know, where I grew up, man, there wasn't no triage therapist where you can walk in. You know, the basketball court was our therapy, or the baseball field or the football field was our therapy. And so we also have that underbelly, that undercurrent of that anxiety that we're working through as well.
You know, I think we have seen over the last year some of the, maybe arguably the most powerful, I don't need to mention names, powerful men of color in the city, you know, really had a hard time.
Yes.
You know, really had a hard time, and that I think probably everyone in this panel would agree was unjustified.
Absolutely.
So if it can happen to him, you know, the young brown and black boys who are in the corners and walking to school from Roxbury to Dorchester, boy, you talk about anxiety.
Yeah.
Right.
If
Absolutely.
the power has anxiety, how about the lower levels? They certainly are going to have anxiety as well. And I certainly will tell you I have anxiety. Absolutely. You know, there's certain things that I certainly will not do and do not do because of my color.
Right.
Because I'd be best suited if I want to stay here on this planet for a long time and be the father of my 2 girls. It's probably best for me not to do such. How do we get others involved?
Yeah.
How do we extend that olive branch and bring more into the fold? How do we have a green room like that with not just you 4, but 4 more and 4 more after that?
Right. Well, we're here because you invited us. No, seriously,
That's appreciated,
right? I mean, that's the answer to the question. We got to continue to invite each other to these opportunities so that we can have these conversations. How often in our days do we really get the chance to sit and talk about the issues that we're working on and that we are impacting and impacted by each and every day? And imagine what happens when we have these conversations.
Right.
What happens is what Bob talked about a moment ago. We have fellowship. We recognize how much we appreciate each other, how we were looking forward to seeing each other today. That's what happens, and we just got to expand that by expanding the invitation. Right?
I agree 100%. You know, I think, you know, I've experienced that, you know, myself since becoming executive director of BAM. But I think prior to being executive director of BAM, I was executive director of a nonprofit mentoring organization that I founded called Diamond Educators. And I didn't find myself in the room a lot when I was an executive director of an organization. I found it. Once I became an executive director of this nationally recognized organization, then doors opened. So I do agree. That shouldn't be the case. Like, this opportunity should be available if there's young and up and coming black and brown boys who have, whether potential or not, if they're black and brown and they're looking for a way and opportunity, it's our duty to open those doors and provide that opportunity for them.
And we open those doors by celebrating them and by building trust.
Absolutely.
And trust happens over time. And so that means that we don't go in for a short haul, that we go and build a foundation which we can build on.
Absolutely.
If I could say 2 things. When we have these opportunities to go to events and activities, bring our young people.
Yes.
Because they need to learn this.
Yeah.
The second thing, which is, I tell folks, hire them.
Yes.
Right. That's
Hire
right.
them. When I look at
That's right.
my director of operations, my site director and folks, all from the neighborhood, all grew up, and they're recognized. And there's something powerful when someone says, and Stefan does this, and Alex does this. Alex, Boston Latin, 12 years, Goldman Sachs, grew up, and still lives in the neighborhood, right?
That's right.
So what we do is we have to do this. And my last thing is, let's not be afraid to celebrate and share, and let folks know it's great when you have a doctor, Reverend Emmett.
Right.
You know,
That's right.
seriously.
That's right. That's
and
right.
how many of our folks are doctors? How many folks are doing things? And
Right.
we got to celebrate that as well, because it's in our community
That's
everywhere.
right. And then let us also remember, like, we don't have to go far to be given the best advice we could ever hope to get. And Frederick Douglass said in 1850, it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men.
Yes, indeed.
That's what we're doing. We're making sure that the children get what they need, the young people get what they need, so that they grow into strong adults.
Shawn?
Yes. No, I was just going to say, end of the day, one of the things I always tell my young people, regardless who comes into that room with them and what their title is, always tell my young people, you're the true expert. You know, you're the true expert. Remember when someone walks in that room, you know, who better can serve our community other than you guys who live in it and experience on a day-to-day basis. So it's just one of the messages that I'm always relaying to our young people.
So I've only been to the base, you know, regrettably once. And when I walked through the base, you know, every one of those, you know, whether it be boys or girls, everybody came up, introduced themselves, looked me in the eye,
Yes.
shook my hand. And then I met a young man over at my kid's school, and he said he played baseball, and he was from the city. And, of course, he was of color, so my next question obviously was, you go to the base. And I said, it's clear, you go to the base. Because of the way he addressed me and the way he spoke to me. So, listen, I know all four of you guys, and man, you know, I'm proud, like I said at the top of the show, I'm proud to know you. And I'm certainly enriched by knowing you. And we just got to keep doing what we're doing.
Yes, absolutely agree.
We just got to keep doing what we're doing. All right, gentlemen, thank you. Emmett, James, Robert, Shawn. A pleasure. I knew we'd have a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun in the back. We'll continue to have a lot more fun. As we continue our broadcast, we say bye to our guests on our live broadcast portion of the show, and we'll continue the conversation on Facebook Live.